What's up, everybody? Welcome into the return of the Phillip Jordan Football Podcast. Been a little bit since I've been doing these episodes. Brand new feed, new everything. Do appreciate you checking out and downloading the podcast. I am Phillip Jordan from Last Word on College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer for Dothan Wolves Football. The Phillip Jordan Football Podcast, this is a NFL-centric show. We'll be talking all things NFL every single week here on the podcast. The podcast schedule will predominantly be on Wednesdays, and pretty much how I said in the teaser how the show is going to go. Every week I'll have a guest on, talk all things NFL, some people you've heard me interview over the years, whether you were listening to me back when I was doing the sideline review on ESPN Dothan, the football report to cover to some regulars that you were used to hearing on those shows will be appearing on here as well. So that will always be the first half of the show. The second half of the show, I'll be joined by a good friend, my former colleague over at Last Word on College Football. He now writes for the LSU Wire, and in the past, he did cover the Jacksonville Jaguars for different online publications, Brandon Eisenman. And what we'll do when Brandon comes on at the second half of every show, we'll pick the games and talk about our thoughts on the big matchups in the NFL every single week. So that will run through the season, but when we run in the off season, the show will go to about a 20-30 minute podcast. I'll still be bringing on the guests every week to talk all the latest things in the National Football League and just talk to some people that play the sport. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad to be back into talking about all things NFL. Before I bring on this week's guest, though, Brent Sobleski from Bleacher Report, let you guys know you can find me and the podcast. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Anchor. Going to be on other platforms here soon. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe, rate, and review. It means a lot if you do that. If you leave a review, I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. That Twitter handle is probably going to change soon because I'm doing more than just SEC stuff now. And also, you can email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Now, let's kick off the re-debut, the relaunch, whatever you want to call it, of the Phillip Jordan Football Podcast. And let's talk NFL with Brent Sobleski from Bleacher Report. Everybody joining me today on the show is Brent Sobleski, Bleacher Report NFL analyst. And Brent, we were just talking off the air. It's been a while since we talked, but I do appreciate you coming on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me as always. And it feels like the last time we had our conversation, we weren't sure exactly what was going to happen. And we've gone through a lot of ups and downs just in a very short amount of time. And furthermore, it does feel like it's been about 2 years since we spoke with everything that has gone on. But thankfully, we still have football. We've gotten to watch a lot of it. And the NFL has been relatively good in keeping everyone as healthy as they possibly can.
Yeah, it is quite a contrast between what happens with the college game and the NFL game. Of course, the college game is a little different. College campus, everything to the NFL. So, overall this year, I mean, what's been your I don't want to say grade, but just your take on how the NFL has handled everything with COVID and getting these games in and everything?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult situation because no matter what you do, you can't prevent outbreaks. It's impossible. And I know that's something we discussed previously, that we expected something to happen because it's a virus. This isn't something that's, for no matter what people want to argue politically or anything like that, that is affecting everyone in every part of this globe. And so I applaud the NFL for doing everything they possibly can in their power to make the game as safe as it possibly can for players, coaches, families, and everything of that ilk. But at the same time, there's flaws. There are issues potentially looking at like the incubation period that we've come to know that takes a few days before you'll actually test positive, even though that you're a carrier at that time. And that's some of the results we've seen outbreaks around certain players as a result within certain teams. And the only thing I would have said personally that I thought they mishandled was the Tennessee Titans situation. I thought that if the players knowingly went out of their way to rebuke NFL guidelines, that they should have potentially conceded that contest. They allowed them to play after moving around the schedule. But other than that, I think the NFL's done a good job overall, just trying to do what they can to continue the season, keep it on track, relatively speaking, even though there's been some games moved around, and just having football, which I think a lot of people appreciate right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the fact that we've got it. I appreciate that. So I'm not one to just been complaining when things get moved around or flipped upside down and all that stuff. Just glad to have it. And everybody, that's the last we will talk about the virus. We're now going to get into the football conversation. I know people get tired of hearing that sometimes too.
I get it, but it's prevalent every day.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday or 2 days ago, we saw Baker Mayfield be around a positive case, so he's not in practice. Today, we saw Ben Roethlisberger being around a positive case. He's not in practice. I mean, these are having real-life repercussions, not just on the field, but outside of it, off of it as well. And so I know we don't want to talk about it. I know it's infiltrating everything, but at the same time, you always have to keep a side eye on what's occurring just so to make sure that everyone that is dealing with these situations are being safe. And I'll be blatantly honest with you. I will be as forthright as I possibly can. Me and my family are currently in quarantine. The school here in my area, with my children and my wife's a teacher, is shut down at the moment because of an outbreak. My uncle, who is currently in the hospital and being treated with multiple different remedies to help him because he's been there all week. So I know what it's like, man. I understand what everyone's going through. I have it personally. And as much as we want to say that it's going to go away and that we're making a bigger issue out of it than it is, that's just unfair to so many people who are out there who are trying to do the best that they can but are still dealing with this virus.
Oh, definitely. I've got family members right now that have been going through it. So, yeah, it's I think it does, when it hits you differently because then you're kind of, okay, it's anything, it's going to hit you a little bit harder when it does hit you where you live. And that's, I say at the end of every podcast, I say, everybody, please do the right things this week. A little thing like that. I'm not trying to get preachy, just let's do the right things and let's, kind of get through this all together. And I hope everything goes well and, prayers and thoughts with your family there, Brent, as y'all, are handling this situation with the virus. And, I guess to try to transition to what is going on, I did see your tweet on Saturday morning. I saw your tweet from Friday about BYU quarterback Zach Wilson. Of course, I know you're a big NFL draft guy. When you look at him, and you said it's not a 3 quarterback race in next year's draft. It's now 4 with Zach Wilson. What have you seen from him at BYU that's really impressed you?
I think the 2 things you've seen from him that show that he can be a top-notch NFL quarterback prospect is, one, his efficiency within that offense, how he's essentially shouldered the load with BYU. Yes, they have a good running game, but at the same time, it's not like they have marquee players at every position. In fact, his top target, which was their senior tight end, Matt Bushman, is out for the year with an ACL injury. So you take that out of the equation, and yet he's still arguably the best quarterback in college football right now. And yes, I said the best quarterback in college football right now. That doesn't necessarily mean he's the best prospect, but just the way he's playing on a Saturday by Saturday basis. And you consistently see him create plays. And that's really, in today's NFL, the biggest difference between what we saw from current quarterbacks compared to the older generation. I mean, you watch what Tom Brady and Drew Brees does, for example, and I know we're going to get to that topic later. It's completely different than what we're seeing with a Kyler Murray, a Lamar Jackson, a Patrick Mahomes, and so on and so forth. And being able to, and I'm not saying Zach Wilson's at the same level as them from an athletic standpoint, but being able to create outside of structure, to show different throwing angles, to show that you can make plays when everything's breaking down around you and stay calm, cool, and collected when pressure is getting to you. And I think Wilson has shown those qualities to really make him not only a top-notch quarterback prospect, but a potential top 10 selection.
Yeah, and with him, I've watched some games too. I think it's unfortunate for him, maybe for fans-wise, because I feel like BYU has played a lot of late-night games from the East Coast. That's always a worry, trying to get people to see these guys, especially you've seen that before in with the Pac-12 and stuff with some of their better players they've had. Yeah, that's one. So we're going to get to him in a little bit. But when you see him play, and I watched a lot of them play when they play Troy, because I'm not far from Troy, so I have an interest in what Troy Trojans do, and he's very impressive, and he has the ability to move, and I like the headband. I guess a little throwback to Jim McMahon, old BYU. Reminder for any of our old school fans out there. So it's just intriguing to see him play, and I'm really interested. These last 2 games they have, they only have 2 games left to schedule, North Alabama, San Diego State. And I guess, too, I'll ask you this, and my worry is you're going to see people out there, well, they didn't play anybody. I think you got to look beyond that. it's, especially him individual as a prospect, just see how he looks on the field, not necessarily the names of the teams that they're playing.
Agreed. And context is important, right? Look, if this season was going as planned, which obviously it isn't because of everything that's going on through the nation and throughout the world, BYU's schedule would look so different. Mm-hmm. They had a stacked schedule against ACC, Pac-12 teams, and so on and so forth. They were going to play one of the most difficult schedules in college football, period. And unfortunately, because of the way most of the big Power 5 conferences scaled back, taking away their games out of conference contests, that it really hurt BYU. And so it was important, for example, when they played Boise State this past week and rang up 51 points on a top 21 team. And that shows how quality this BYU team is and where Wilson stands in his overall performance. Because you're correct in stating that, yes, you want to see players play against the best opposition. Now, there's no denying that whatsoever. But at the same time, when it comes to evaluations, you can evaluate individuals separate of their surroundings based on what they're accomplishing and how they're executing. And so with Wilson, that's why I mentioned his efficiency, that he's slowly picking apart teams and taking big shots downfield and doing so accurately and within the context of the offense. And then on top of it, when things do break down, he is capable of creating big plays there as well. And that's what's really important with his ability and why it should translate. It's no different, for example, than looking at Trey Lance, who most, if not everyone, had as a potential top 10 pick from North Dakota State. That's 1AA. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're going to be playing top-end talent week in and week out. So what do you want to see from him? Do you want to see how he continues to progress as a passer? You want to see how his running ability affects the offense overall and how it can be utilized at the next level? These are all things that can be evaluated in a vacuum to best assess what they can be at the next level.
Oh, most definitely. And I wanted to jump over to two quarterbacks you did name there, the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay All-Stars, as I guess they want to refer to themselves now. But, New Orleans, they've got Tampa Bay's number, it seems like, this year. They beat them in the opener 34-23, and really the Saints' offense still didn't look great that game. And then this past Sunday night, the marquee game of the weekend, they beat them 38-3. Tom Brady's got 5 interceptions against the Saints. Just when you've seen these two teams match up, what is it about the Saints that's kind of giving Tampa Bay trouble right now?
Continuity matters.
Mm-hmm.
Continuity matters. And I know we do it every single year. We do it every single year. And I'm not trying to be repetitive in my responses, but I'm just trying to drive home points here. When it comes to how everyone gets excited about whoever, quote-unquote, wins the off-season, we're always placing undue expectations on them before they ever go out to prove themselves. I mean, the reigning Super Bowl champion Cleveland Browns, wait, that's not right. That didn't work out that way. And while it's obviously very different, I'm being facetious when comparing last year's Browns, bringing in Odell Beckham and so on and so forth, to this year's Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, and so on and so forth. The same thing still applies to a lesser degree. You still need to go into, you're still bringing in key performers at vital positions that have to, 1, get used to a new system, 2, get used to a new coaching staff, 3, get used to a whole new surroundings from a personal perspective. And that's not easy, and it takes time. It takes reps. It takes just time together on and off the field to really fulfill your potential. And with Tampa Bay, yes, they've been pretty good overall, but at the same time, when you're playing someone like the New Orleans Saints, who's been the cream of the crop when it comes to the NFC South for multiple years, it's difficult to usurp that throne when they have a quarterback and a coach who have been together for, 15 years. They have guys like Cameron Jordan. They have one of the best offensive lines that's played together for years, and that gives them a distinct advantage. Now, I do see Tampa Bay as a playoff team, but I never once viewed them as a Super Bowl candidate until I could see them come together fully. And to make matters worse, you're still adding pieces. You added Leonard Fournette right before the season began, so you have to start working him in and how he's going to be in your rotation. Now you go out and sign Antonio Brown. They're throwing a lot into the mix very quickly, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to work. And I think we saw that when they faced the Saints, and that game was over essentially after the first quarter.
Yeah, and I'm going to admit something here that I have posted on social media at the beginning of the year. I was pretty much accusing of Drew Brees of being done, and I want to apologize first up. And look, I'm not going to go all the way back. I'll take back everything I said. I do believe he cannot push the ball down the field anymore, but that's not really what the Saints offense is anyways. It's a lot at the line of scrimmage, the short passes, let the playmakers do their deal. When you've seen people say that about Drew Brees this year and you see kind of how this team has turned around, which that 1-2 start was not on the offense or him. That was really on the defense, and the defense seems to be picking it up these last few weeks as well. With the Saints, where have you seen with them this year, especially offensively with Drew Brees, how they really move the ball well with the style of offense that they play, and I guess defense too. Where do you see this team headed as the rest of the season?
Well, it's not just the defense. I mean, you have Michael Thomas gone for basically half your season so far, and that's a huge weapon within your scheme in general. Everyone knows he's going to get the ball, but he's still going to get open. He's still going to catch it. And when you have that reliability at that position, it can't be replaced once that player's gone, whether it be through injury or whatever means. And so looking at it now, getting him back for one game and then throughout the rest of the season, that's going to be a huge boost. Having Alvin Kamara healthy, which he hasn't been all season. Again, I mentioned the offensive line because I think it's important when you watch them against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has one of the most aggressive defensive fronts in football, and Todd Bowles, generally speaking, likes to blitz. They didn't consistently against the Saints. They decided to drop back more in zone because they felt that they can get potential pressure with their front 3 or 4 and then try to confuse Brees. Obviously, that didn't work. And that's essentially what it boils down to, right? That you have a maestro at quarterback. And I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I want to say it's between 75 and 80%. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to go look it up. But the vast majority of passes are under 10 to 15 yards in the NFL anyways. So you don't necessarily need Drew Brees to consistently drive the ball downfield. You just need to have that threat every once in a while. And so if he can find opportunities when they present themselves, it will help stretch out the defense a little bit. But the most important aspect is that he remains his most efficient self with his uncanny accuracy to consistently distribute the ball to all the different offensive playmakers that New Orleans has, whether it is Thomas or Kamara or Jared Cook or Emmanuel Sanders or Traquan Smith and so on and so forth. That makes them very dangerous because from where their foundations build up front, Brees is going to have time in most occasions to deliver the football, and he's smart enough and accurate enough to do so consistently. And so as long as a defense can't just essentially get them out of rhythm, they're difficult to beat just because they're so smart and so used to playing within that system. And that's really what gave them a major advantage over Tampa Bay, who kind of went away from their strength, which was being one of the most aggressive defenses in the NFL going into that game.
Yeah, because you saw it a lot with when they played the Packers, and that's kind of where my next thing is going. When you look at the NFC overall, I guess if you have a quarterback that's over 35 years old or close to the 40, yes, you're going to have an elite team in 2020 because it seems like the 3 best teams in the NFC all have that. And of course, I'm joking, but with the Packers, are in your opinion, are they up there with those teams? Are they contenders the rest of the way?
Well, the NFC is not as difficult as the AFC at the moment. I mean, you have the Steelers and the Chiefs right at the top, and they're probably the 2 best teams in the NFL right now. The Ravens, while they haven't beaten either of those 2 squads, are just a step behind them. Titans at 6-2, Raiders playing well as of late, Buffalo 7-2. So there's some real competition in the AFC. The NFC's, again, we're just going to forget about the NFC least because no one gives a hoot about any of those 4 teams at the moment. You have Green Bay, and yes, they're quality, but there's still major question marks. One, they're thin at running back at the moment, with Aaron Jones being dinged up, still playing well, but dinged up. Then you had their 2 backups on COVID recently on the COVID list, so they need to reintegrate them back into the rotation and how they want to utilize them. Devontae Adams is absolutely amazing. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL right now, but at the same time, who's your second target? And that's really been the major question of Green Bay for all offseason into this season is where's that secondary threat going to come in the passing game? First, it was the running backs and tight end Robert Tonyan, but they don't have a true wide receiver 2 in that scheme, and it really makes things difficult because as good as Devontae Adams is, the defenses are going to continually roll rotations in his manner. So you need someone on the backside of him, that can beat one-on-one matchups, and they just don't have that guy. So that's the one major question mark that's been lingering for months upon months in Green Bay. Defensively, they can be better as well. They have been inconsistent against the run, for example. But where's the competition coming from? The Chicago Bears, as good as they are defensively, that offense at times is a crime against humanity. You look at the Vikings, they're getting better. They won their 2 last games, and Dalvin Cook's been running wild, but they're still at 3-5, so it's not like they're a major contender yet. The Saints, fantastic, for all the reasons we stated earlier. The Buccaneers still coming together. The Seahawks, you would think, are every bit as good as anyone else in the NFC, but their defense is non-existent. I mean, literally, it's the worst defense in the NFL, and it's not getting any better. The only other team that I would look at that has the potential to really shoot above it was maybe the Cardinals if Kyler Murray takes off with his surrounding cast. So that's the thing with the NFC is the point I'm trying to get at. Everyone you're discussing, there's question marks, and there's things that can go wrong very easily for them this season that will drop them down a rung or two comparative to everyone else in the conference.
Yeah, and that's what makes it fun on Sundays watching these games, because as we head into, whenever the playoffs do get here, it's going to be interesting on that side. And then I guess lastly too, jumping over to the AFC, and you have the Steelers sitting there. We talk about Ben Roethlisberger, of course, on Monday, on Tuesday when we're recording this, he is on the COVID list with the Steelers and among other players with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they're sitting at 8-0, but you kind of look at the Steelers, you see they're 8-0, but if you watch them, it's like they're not complete, which, none of these teams are. I know there's no team without flaws. But they are 8-0. Of course, they struggle with Dallas, who is playing Garrett Gilbert, their quarterback, a former Alliance member. And then they had a game with the Ravens where they struggled for a half, and then they almost let Tennessee Titans come back on there. But they are 8-0, they're winning games. But then you got the Chiefs, of course, with 1 loss, and you got the Ravens as well. So when you look at the AFC, I mean, the Steelers, when they stack up against those teams, are they the best in AFC right now, or is it one of them deals where you still got to give it to the Chiefs, the defending champions?
Well, I am a huge proponent of what the great philosopher Ric Flair always said. To be the man, woo, you got to beat the man. With that said, I do think the Steelers are right there, and it's not above them, but right in the same conversation as the Chiefs. And the reason why is very simple. It's not because of Roethlisberger. It's not because of how many sacks they get. It's not because of all the weapons they have on offense. They are simply the most physical team in the NFL, period. They physically dominate you, particularly in the trenches. They have linebackers that come downhill and will light your ass up if they're able to shoot the gap. And that's what's been the most impressive thing to me. Yeah, they probably took Dallas a little lightly. I'm not going to deny that whatsoever. But in today's NFL, almost every game or every team has that hiccup throughout the season. I mean, let's not forget the Baltimore Ravens were 14-2 last year, and they lost to the Cleveland Browns by letting the Browns drop a 40 burger on them. So it's not like one game is going to be a telltale sign for your entire campaign. And so when I see what a guy like Cameron Hayward, a guy like Stephon Tuitt, what they do on a consistent basis to grown men on the other side of the ball is just utterly amazing. Furthermore, you have a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's playing as well as basically anyone in the NFL. I likened him to Ed Reed on social media, and I know that's probably blasphemous for most people, but his instincts right now, the way he's playing, are just legendary. He is around everything. He is making plays each and every game. It is something to behold and just mind-boggling that the Miami Dolphins couldn't find a way to utilize him properly. The Steelers have. They've benefited greatly. And that defense is playing very, very well, despite a couple hiccups the last 2 weeks. Now, the question I have about them is very simple. Is Ben Roethlisberger going to stay healthy? I mean, let's take the fact that he's on the COVID list out of the equation. He was banged up coming out of that Dallas game, left shortly before the second quarter ended. He's got basically sore knees. And if those knees start bothering him, if that elbow starts bothering him at any point, then that's going to be problematic, because we know the Steelers, as good as they are everywhere else, aren't good enough with Mason Rudolph to lead them to the playoffs or beyond. And so I think that's the real question mark, is just keeping Ben Roethlisberger healthy, and if they do, they're a legit Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I think you even saw it just for a few plays that Rudolph was in there, that it's a complete drop-off when he comes into the game from what Big Ben is with that team.
I mean, so think about it, man. Why did they not invest anything in the quarterback position behind Roethlisberger? I don't understand it. It was one of the most just utterly baffling things that occurred this offseason, aside from Dallas not paying Dak Prescott and the Houston Texans trading DeAndre Hopkins. Beyond those things, which were the worst moves of the offseason, Pittsburgh not doing anything at quarterback is definitely up there.
Yeah, I know he's interception prone. I mean, the king of the 30-30 club. But I mean, Jameis Winston would have been a good pickup for them, because at least you do have a guy that has shown that he can do some things if he gets the turnovers out of his system. He can be a good quarterback at times. I think he still has the ability. So with those weapons in Pittsburgh, and they're going to run the ball, it's not all on your shoulders. I mean, he would have been a great guy that could have learned under Big Ben, and could have been a guy, if Big Ben gets hurt, you have a guy you could put in there and you can say, okay, we can win this game, because you can't feel that way with Rudolph. No disrespect to him, but you just can't feel that way when he comes into the game, that you have a chance to win with him at quarterback.
I agree 100%. Or even take a flyer on someone like Josh Rosen. Yeah, we know he's had his problems, but that was a top 10 pick just recently. So put him in a secure situation where he doesn't have to worry about being the guy or being thrown into the fire, and that could have been a really nice fit there as well. Just any type of move, because we knew last year what we saw. There was no way Rudolph, or at the time Duck Hodges, was able to really go and be able to move them forward beyond anything. I understand they have a lot invested in Ben Roethlisberger. He's their guy, and so on and so forth. But man, long-term planning, you would think a team as stable as the Steelers would have a better idea of how to do so, especially at the game's most important position.
Yeah, and hey, the guy on the other side, you could have had Garrett Gilbert. I think he's a step up over Rudolph and all them. But it is what it is. But I know you were a fan of the Alliance. I was a fan of the Alliance. I was happy to see him play on Sunday, and I think he really played well for the Cowboys, and knowing that situation too. So
I did, and the pride of the Orlando Apollos, he's a player that deserves to be in the league, and it was a smart move by Dallas. It really was. Yes, they had Andy Dalton, but he was Gilbert was sitting on the Browns practice squad, and they liked him a lot. They didn't want him to leave. They had him protected every single week. But there's that new rule that you can protect players, but it's only after Monday every week. If a team contacts you Monday, they are allowed to sign you, and that's how Dallas got out from under it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I just hope he gets another opportunity down the road. Because like I said, he did play well on Sunday against the Steelers, against that defense too. But anyways, Brent, I probably kept you. I know I told you 20. I think I've got you at 25 minutes now. So I do appreciate you coming on the show. As always, it's always good to talk all things NFL and draft-related stuff with you. But if the listeners want to follow you online, where they find you and your work over at Bleacher Report?
Yeah, it's very simple. You can always find me on Twitter at Brent Sobleski, Sobleski. All my work shows up on Bleacher Report's regular site, whether you download the app or just look on your old CPU. I'm there constantly. So it's just same old. It's the season. It's plugging away. It's enjoying football, and that's really, really nice to have, considering the last time we had this conversation, we weren't quite sure how things were going to work out.
Yeah, absolutely. You are correct on that one. And we were wondering what kind of season, if we would have a season. So it's all great every week. I'm just thankful that we do have it. We do have football to watch both Saturdays and Sundays. And once again, Brent, hope you and your family, y'all were good. Stay healthy and with everything going on. And once again, I do appreciate you coming on the show. And I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
No, I appreciate it. And thank you for having me as always, good sir. And everyone out there, please stay safe and be conscientious of others.
All right, everybody, and joining me now, and this is something we'll do every week here on the Phillip Jordan Football Podcast in this spot on the show, and that is I'll be joined by Brendan Eisenman, a longtime friend, been a guest on many podcasts I've had, has co-hosted with me from time to time as well, but he'll come on in this part of the show, and we will pick all the NFL games. Now, I'm just going to let y'all know, we're not going to sit here and dissect every game from position to position, but we're going to give our picks real quickly and maybe some other news items that I wasn't able to discuss with my first guest in the show. But anyways, Brandon is on the phone right now. Now, college football-wise, he covers LSU for LSU Wire, and he has his podcast, LSU Breakdown Podcast, and formerly did cover the Jacksonville Jaguars for multiple different online outlets. But anyways, Brandon, I appreciate you hopping on, I guess, the relaunch, re-debut of the Phillip Jordan Football Podcast and pick some NFL games.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to be back on with you.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell everybody this too. I could do this segment by myself, but it's a whole lot more fun when you pass somebody on the other side of the microphone doing these games. And I guess you can say we're two college football writers trying to talk about the NFL. So I'm sure the internet won't give us any trouble when they listen to this.
Yeah, certainly, man, certainly.
So, anyways, and for you, I guess, kind of give a backstory to NFL-wise, and I'll go ahead and put it out there behind the curtain. I'm a Packers fan. I'm a fan of Green Bay Packers, so there's an interesting situation when we do get to the picks. But for you, Brandon, how long have you been a Jaguars fan, and where does that genesis come from?
Yeah, so I've only been a Jags fan for a couple of years. I've liked them, ever since I started watching football, but I never really got into Jacksonville Jaguars football until my dad moved down to Jacksonville a couple of years ago. I grew up a big New Orleans Saints fan. I still like the Saints. Drew Brees is my favorite quarterback of all time. But when Dad moved to Jacksonville, it just kind of hit me that, hey, the Jaguars might be an up-and-coming team. Let's get on board. And especially when they changed their uniforms a couple of years ago from those trash ones they had for a few seasons, man. It really hit me because I was a big Blake Bortles fan, and I know that sounds bad. That's a really bad take. But then they drafted Leonard Fournette, my guy at LSU, and it just, I don't know, that just kind of hit me like, I like their logo. I love the city of Jacksonville. I just need the football team to start winning and not be a top five draft pick every year.
Yeah, of course, I hate to bring up the painful memory, but they were so close to, Super Bowl a couple years ago against New England. And then a lot of people, they got to a couple actually AFC Championship games back in the day, not too long after they were first founded as a team. The Tennessee Titans, I believe it was the 99 season, which I could be wrong. I think it's the 99 season. They were within one game, and then the Titans beat them, and then the Titans go on to lose to the Rams. So, and everybody likes to make fun of the Jaguars. They have had some runs where they've been pretty good and been a playoff team. I know this year has not been so good last couple of years, but they have had some success. Contrary to the belief of some people on the internet that wants to make fun of them, there has been success there. But, and like I said, bringing you on, and we're going to, one thing I want to talk about, because earlier when I recorded my conversation with Bleacher Report Brent Sobleski, so news dropped after we got done recording, which always happens when you do these podcasts. It seems like you're going to have news drop, big news, after you've done after you're done recording the show, after you hit the stop button. But, and I told you about this off the air before we got started here, that's the fact is that NFL potentially could be expanding the playoffs. Again, of course, going into this season, this was going to be the first year where 7 teams from each conference would get into the postseason. I was not in favor of that. I think it cheapens it, to be honest with you, adding that 17. But the new situation is here. They could have 8 in each conference, but that is only if you have a situation where the teams don't play the full 16-game schedule. They'll put something in place to have 8 teams on both sides. It would be winning percentage is how you would be seeded. So I'm not as against this because I know it's a tough situation if we are put in that situation. But Brandon, you hear this. What comes to your mind?
Yeah, look, Phillip, I like that idea. I think that these last few weeks, months of the season, if it boils down to it to where, X amount of teams can't play their games, you expand it by 1 team per each conference. I like that idea. I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. I kind of like the 7-team original format that we're going to have this year if all the games are played. I don't really like that, but I think that adding in, an 8th team to let everybody get their games in, I like that idea. At least the NFL is taking some initiative and stepping up, being like, hey, if you can't play all your games, we'll give you an extra playoff spot based on winning percentage. I think that's a really, really good take by the NFL to step up and do something like that.
And, looking at it that way too, so then you wouldn't have any buys in the first round, which that's kind of something. I know it's a tough, situation. 2020 COVID, you just don't know, and it's just everything's different. But I am kind of surprised that the owners are going to agree on this, because then that would take away the bye week for your number one seeds, that advantage of getting that off week in the playoffs. But another thing I'm interested in too, because if you go with 8 on both sides, all the games you're going to be having played on that first round. So I'm wondering, will they try to have 2 games going on at the same time on Saturday and Sunday, or potentially could we have some Monday night playoff games?
Yeah, look, I'd be okay with some Monday night playoff games. I mean, you get Monday night and Thursday night football during the season, so why not give us, maybe Saturday, Sunday, and Monday throughout the playoffs, give us 3 straight days of NFL football. That brings up your TV revenue and a bunch of other things. I actually like that idea, Phil. That's not a bad take.
And you could throw one on, or you could say, hey, we'll throw one game on Friday and then we'll throw another game on Monday. Again, I think the only problem you're going to have with that, and coaches will probably really be loud about this and give their opinion, that they don't want to go up against a team. Let's say, for instance, they played on Monday and then they're playing a team that played Saturday or something like that. Then, because, they're always looking at somebody get an unfair advantage, because they already complained about the Monday night and then playing on Sunday, that one-day disadvantage. So I think that's the only thing that potentially that could throw a monkey wrench in that situation.
Yeah, that could be a big debate amongst the coaches in the NFL there, because that would present kind of an unfair advantage. But look, the coaches are going to voice their opinions on this, and if it comes down to that, then maybe they find another way to restructure this. But just presumably thinking, I like this whole extra team in each conference. And look, like I said, man, I'll be okay with Monday night games. I love NFL. Honestly, I wish we kind of had some Friday night games during the regular season, just because, hey, it's an extra day of football. But yeah, it would present an unfair advantage, and I think you'll hear that opinion from a lot of the coaches around the league.
And I've got the standings in front of me, the playoff standings, how it would look. And, of course, 1 through 7, the AFC would be Steelers, Chiefs, Bills, Titans, Ravens, Raiders, Dolphins. But then if you're going to throw in a 8 team in there, right now the AFC, you would have the Browns and the Colts are tied at 5-3, which Colts have a big game on Thursday night, which we'll talk about in a second when we do pick all these games for this weekend. Then in the NFC, you have a 3-way tie for the top spot. Saints, Seahawks, and Packers are all 6-2. You have the Eagles from the NFC least at 3-4-1. Then you have the Buccaneers at 6-3, the Cardinals at 5-3, and the Rams at 5-3 at the 7th spot. The 8th spot there, it's a little bit kind of doesn't feel as attractive as the AFC does. The Bears at 5-4, which they've lost 3 games in a row. The 49ers, who we know are injured, so many injuries right now with the 49ers. They're really restricted with what they can do because of those injuries. Then you have the Vikings at 3-5 there. So, and that's interesting too. You would give more teams a chance, and it's intriguing, and that kind of brings me, before we get into picks, man, there's actually a good amount of teams. I'm looking at the NFL right now. I could see in the Super Bowl. I mean, we just mentioned AFC, Steelers, Chiefs. The Bills are playing really well. The Titans, the Ravens, I think are teams that could get there potentially if things fell right. The Saints, Seahawks, I mean, their defense is really suspect, but the Packers, the Buccaneers, who knows which version of that team you're going to get from week to week. Cardinals, maybe they upset some people. They've got weapons offensively. So, man, it's intriguing with the league right now. I think we have a lot of good teams, but there's not one great team. So there's a lot of different scenarios and different kind of matchups we could potentially see in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, certainly. And, Phillip, even if, they play all of the regular season games and we don't get that extra team from each conference in the playoffs, man, there's still so many teams out there that are vying for, that final playoff spot. And there's so many teams that are worthy of it. And coming down the stretch here, man, it's going to be crazy to see how all of it shakes out. But, man, there's so many teams that really are Super Bowl worthy teams. For me, man, I'll just go ahead and pick a side here. I think the AFC is going to be a little bit more intriguing to watch down the stretch, just because there's so many top talent teams over in that league. I mean, in the NFC, you've got 4 or 5 of them, but the AFC is loaded this year with just great talent all across the board. But yeah, I mean, it really does bring up an intriguing kind of situation as we get down the stretch here of the season and get closer to the playoffs.
Yeah, it is. And you look at AFC, you've got Steelers at 8-0, and look, Big Ben, 1, he's on the COVID list, and 2, he injured his knee. Actually, I think injured both of them in that game against Dallas on Sunday. They're 8-0, but they just don't feel like they're a dominant 8-0. They're getting by very closely in a lot of these games. And then, of course, you got the defending champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. You can't bet against them. The Ravens are still in the AFC for me. You got to win in the playoffs. I mean, you can win all these regular season games you want, but the last 2 years you've got knocked out first game in the playoffs. You've got to win some playoff games. I think that's what people are looking for. So until you get the playoffs, what people think about you, that's going to stay the same. Then, like you said, the NFC, Packers, Saints, the Seahawks, repeating it, Buccaneers. It's just going to be crazy. And I tell you what, when you look at Week 10, we have got some interesting matchups too. And that's where we're going to now jump into the picks for today's show. And starting on Thursday night, you do have the Colts at 5-3, at the Titans at 6-2. This is a big game in the AFC South here between these two teams. The Colts trying to tie up with the Titans, take over that division lead. So I guess I'll give you the first pick here, Brandon. What are you thinking with the Colts and the Titans?
Phillip, I'm going to take the Titans at home. They're in Nashville. I know it's a Thursday night game. From my memory, the last couple of times the Titans have played on Thursday Night Football, at least, doing against the Jaguars, and God, that's been an abysmal game for Jacksonville each time. But, man, I just think Tennessee's the better team here. Look, Indianapolis, they're kind of a scary good team, but they're also on the creep up too, if you will. Like, I think Tennessee's got the division locked up. But, man, I just think the Colts can keep it close, but I'm going to pick Tennessee to win this game outright.
Well, you know what's going to happen. It's going to be close, and Phillip Rivers is going to throw an interception at the end of the game to lose it for the Colts. That's probably what's going to happen in this one. I'm going with the Titans. I think it is a close game on Thursday night, but I'm going to go with Tennessee as well. On Sunday, this is the 12 o'clock games on Sunday, and there's a lot of 3 o'clock games this week, a lot more than we're used to, so not as many 12 o'clock games this week. The Texans at 2-6 will be at the Browns, who are 5-3. The Browns do come in this game as a 3-point favorite. Good news for the Browns coming into this game. Nick Chubb is taking part in drills. Don't mean he will play, but he is taking part in drills. And the Texans give up a lot of points here. I'm going to go with the Browns here. Texans, to me, they're bad defensively, and it's all of Deshaun Watson. If he doesn't win the game for them, carry the game on his shoulders, they have no chance. They'll probably keep it close, but I actually think I'm going to go to Browns with this one.
Yeah, Phil, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to take Cleveland, too. Look, I was very on the fence with picking this game when I was looking at the matchups for this week a little while ago before we started recording. And I really wanted to take the Texans just because, they beat Jacksonville last week. I know that's not saying much this deep into the season. But, man, the Browns have been, a pretty solid team throughout the year. And I'm going to give it to Cleveland. I think they get the 6-3. The Texans will fall to 2-7. I agree with you, man. The Texans just aren't very good defensively. They give up a lot of points, and I think they'll give up a lot of points to the Browns this week.
Yeah, I do too. I think Baker Mayfield was going to have a big day, and also they get tight end Austin Hooper. Looks like he was going to be able to play this Sunday as well. Next up, you have the Washington football team. I almost said their old name. I'll admit, I almost said it. Washington, they are 2-6 on the year. They will be at Detroit, who are 3-5 on the year. Detroit, right now, they are looking at as a 4-point favorite in this game. Interesting note on this game, Washington, they are 0-3 away, but the Lions are 0-3 at home. I'm figuring Alex Smith will start this game. Kyle Allen, quarterback for the Red. I about said it again. For Washington, had that injury last week. I went back and forth on this one when I was looking over it. I'm going to go with Detroit. I think this one is another really tight game. It really was a hard one to pick, but I'm going to have to lean with the Lions.
Oh, man, the first game up in the NFC East. Yeah, give me Detroit, too. Look, I have no faith in Washington to win this game. Even though Detroit's 0-3 at home and Washington is 0-3 on the road, I think the Lions they're going to get their first home win of the season, man.
And I will say this, though. It is incredible what Alex Smith has done to get back on the football field. I mean, that's one thing here. I mean, yeah, I'm picking against him in this game, but what he has done just to get back on the field, I mean, it is amazing, and it's one of the better stories we've had this year in the NFL.
Yeah, it certainly has been, man.
Next we got, this is the fun one, everybody. Next we have the 1-7 Jaguars at the 6-2 Packers. The Packers are a 13.5-point favorite here. Packers, of course, coming off the 34-17 win over the 49ers last Thursday. Of course, the 49ers were depleted with injuries. Jacksonville will still be without Gardner Minshew. Jake Luton, who played well last week in the loss to the Texans, he was 26 for 38, 304, 1 touchdown. So, Brandon, what's your pick? How did the Jaguars upset the Packers?
Oh, man. I'm taking Jacksonville. No, I'm just kidding. I'm taking Green Bay by at least 21. The only way the Jaguars beat the Packers is Jake Luton's going to have to be efficient throwing the ball, especially in the deep game. And they're going to have to run the ball well with James Robinson. But I don't see either of those things happening. I see Aaron Rodgers picking apart this Jaguars defense for at least 300 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm going to take the Packers big. I know I'm a Jags fan, but, man, we're not good at all. Give me Green Bay. All
right. Of course, I'm going with the Packers on this one. Pretty easy there. You talked about the NFC least earlier. We have a matchup of two teams from that division. The Eagles at 3-4-1 will be at the Giants 2-7. Both wins for the Giants this year are against the Washington football team. Last time these two played on a Thursday night back on October 22nd, the Eagles won 22-21. Look, I don't want to see this game. I hope I'm not forced to watch this game. This better not be the game we get locally on our Fox down here in Dothan. But I'm going to pick the Eagles. I mean, they should win this one. Who knows? But I'm just going to go with Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Philadelphia, too. I'll be coming back from Jacksonville when this game is played. But if I was at home and I pulled the same stuff from both the two up here in Troy, and if this was the Fox game, man, I turn it to CBS. Like, I don't care what game is on. I don't want to watch this game at all. But I don't have faith in the Giants to pull this off. They're not a very good football team. I know they have 2 wins, but I think the Eagles start to rebound, and I think they find a way to win this game. Now, it could come down to the wire again. It could be another close game, but I think they find a way to win.
All right, next up, we do have the Buccaneers at 6-3 at the Panthers, 3-6. Tampa Bay, they are listed as a 5-point favorite so far. Of course, Carolina, they lost a very close game against the Chiefs last week, 33-31. Christian McCaffrey is day-to-day with a shoulder injury he got against the Chiefs. Of course, the Buccaneers are coming off that big loss, 38-3 to the New Orleans Saints on Sunday night. We'll see what they do. I mean, I'm sure they're going to be wanting to come in and fix and look better from what they did against the Saints. But I'm going to pick Tampa Bay here, but I do believe this will be a close game as well. Carolina is much better than their 3-6 record. They showed that against the Chiefs this past Sunday. But I'm just going to go with Tampa Bay because I just don't think Tom Brady's going to lose 2 games in a row like that.
Oh, man, give me Carolina at home. After what I saw the Saints do to the Bucks on Sunday Night Football, I just don't know that Brady can rebound from that. This isn't the New England Patriots. This isn't, the lethal offenses that he's had there. Mike Evans was non-existent at wide receiver last week when he was covered by Marshall Lattimore in that Saints-Bucks game. And you're right, man. The Panthers are much better on the field than what their record said they are. I was hoping they would have beat the Chiefs last week. That was actually a really good game. But, man, I'm going to take the Panthers here in an upset.
All right, now we're going to jump into the 3 o'clock games. There's some really good ones here. This is not one of them that we're about to do first. The Broncos at 3-5 at the Raiders, who are 5-3 on the year. The Las Vegas Raiders are 5-point favorites here. Derek Carr's been really good this year. 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a little over 2,000 yards passing. I tell you what, well, their defense is not good there at the Raiders. That's one thing. Offense is really good. The defense is obviously their weakness. I was very disappointed in Drew Lock and the Broncos team, the way they played against the Falcons this past Sunday. I wasn't surprised Atlanta came out victorious, but I figured the Broncos would put up a much better game. That game was not as close as the score indicated. They got some cheap touchdowns there toward the end of the game to make it closer than it really was. So I look at this. I'm not going to get excited about a Broncos game again anytime soon, and I'm going to go with the Raiders here.
Yeah, look, I'm going to take the Raiders too. Our guy Drew Lock is, man, it's been a rough year for him. And Jerry Jeudy's upset because he's tired of losing. I could see him having a big game at receiver just because, you know, he's kind of upset at losing. He wants to win. But I like the Raiders' offense. I think they get it done at home.
Next up, we got the Chargers at 2-6, which that record should be better if they would quit blowing leads. They are at the Dolphins, who are 5-3. Miami's a 2.5-point favorite here. This is two rookie quarterbacks, Justin Herbert versus Tua. Herbert on the season has been really good. I mean, up for Rookie of the Year with the year he's having. 67% passing, 2,146 yards, 17 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Tua last week in his second start, they defeated the Arizona Cardinals 34-31. He was 20 for 28, 248 and 2 touchdowns. The Dolphins are 2-0 with Tua at quarterback. I'm really looking forward to this game. This should be a lot of fun. I think we're going to see some points scored in this one. And I'm actually, Brandon, I'm going with the upset this one. I think the Chargers are going to beat the Dolphins on Sunday.
Oh, Phillip, I can't agree with you on that one. Look, man, on Sunday it's going to be Tua time again, and that's really all I have to say. I'm taking the Dolphins.
All right. Hey, I'm just glad we had a couple. I think we've had two that we've disagreed on. So, at least it's not going all agreements here. I figured we would start disagreeing when we got to these bigger matchups in the 3 o'clock window. Another big one, and this was another one. I'm going to have Red Zone on my tablet on Sunday because you'll have the Bills at 7-2, at the Cardinals at 5-3. Arizona, they are actually a 2.5-point favorite here. The Bills are coming off that 44-34 win over Seattle. Big game by Josh Allen in that game. He may have put his name back into the MVP conversation, and the Cardinals have been playing well offensively this year as well. Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, what they're doing there. I think a lot of points get scored here. The Bills' defense is not as good as they were last year, but the offense is much better this year. I'm going to take the road team here. I think Buffalo's going to win.
Yeah, I'm taking the Bills too. Look, man, the Bills are one of the surprise teams, not only just in the AFC East or the AFC this year. They're a surprise team in the league. And I think the Cardinals, I don't really see the Cardinals being able to fix their issues from last week against the Dolphins. So give me Buffalo.
All right. Seattle at 6-2 will be at the Rams at 5-3. The Rams, I'm kind of shocked with this here. They're a 1.5-point favorite. Seattle is giving up a lot of points this year. They have some injuries on their defense, but they can't stop anybody. They can't get pressure on the quarterback, and their DBs just have no chance against receivers against really good teams. They're giving up 30 points per game on the year. The Rams, though, they're coming off of bye weeks. In their last game, they did lose to Miami in Tua's debut, where he was very protected by the Miami play calling. But they did lose that game 17-28. Jared Goff had 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles. That was a big reason why they lost. So it's going to be big, I think, for the Rams to try to turn things around this game, put that game as Miami in the rearview mirror and come out and play their style of game. And I've gone back and forth, but, I just think Seattle's going to put up a lot of points here, and maybe the Rams won't be able to keep up with it. So I think I'm going to take Seattle.
Yeah, I'm going to take Seattle, too. I don't think Russell Wilson is going to let Seattle lose a second straight game. Give me the Seahawks, man.
All right, next you have the 49ers at 4-5 at the Saints at 6-2. New Orleans, they are a 9.5-point favorite here. Nick Mullins will start at quarterback for the 49ers. I don't think George Kittle's going to play either, so that's big too. The Saints have the number 3 defense. I will be intrigued to see how the Saints come out in this game, coming off that big high of that big win over Tampa Bay. I mean, that was the game of the week going into last weekend's games. But with that said, the Saints are going to win this. Just the 49ers are just too depleted right now, and luckily 49ers, for them, after this week, they do go into their bye week, so maybe they can get a little bit healthy. But, yeah, I'm going to go with New Orleans.
Yeah, Phillip, this is revenge from last year. Give me the Saints, man. I don't really see Nick Mullins and the Niners being able to do much. Drew Brees is starting to look a little bit better. I know a lot of people have criticized him, saying his arm was shot. a couple games into the year, but he proved everybody wrong last weekend in Tampa. So give me the Saints.
Yeah, I remember that game. That was a really good football game last year between the Saints and the 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo made some pretty big throws in that game. So that's kind of like one of the things when people get on him and say, yeah, but he did show it there. But, yeah, you won't see that. You're not going to see that in this contest this week. And the last game, then there's 3 o'clock window, is the Bengals at Steelers. And for everybody out there listening, I'm saying 3 o'clock or 12 o'clock. Me and Brandon, we are in the Central Time Zone, so that's why I'm saying those times if anybody's wondering. Bengals are 2-5-1. The Steelers, of course, are 8-0. Steelers are 6.5-point favorite here. Now, the big question here, and this is what makes this game hard to pick, really, with Big Ben. Don't know if he's going to play. You know, he's on the COVID list for the Steelers. He'll be tested again, so don't know if he will play in this game. Of course, he did get dinged up a bit against the Cowboys. Joe Burrow has played really well all year. I mean, the offensive line with the Bengals is horrible, but he has played well, completing 67% of his passes. Steelers got a really good defense. Like I said, it's hard to pick this one. If Big Ben doesn't play, I could see Cincinnati winning, but I'm still going to lean with the Steelers because I really like their defense. And with that defense getting after Burrow with that offense line that's not good with Cincinnati, that's pretty much why I think the Steelers are going to win.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Steelers too. And look, Phillip, you know me. I'm an LSU fan. I'm a big Joe Burrow homer, but I'm just going to take the early assumption that Big Ben's going to play and the Steelers are going to move to 9-0. The Bengals just don't have an offensive line at all to protect Joe Burrow. And he really doesn't have any receivers to throw to except for A.J. Green. I think the Steelers are going to win at home. Now, even if Roethlisberger doesn't play, I still think the Steelers find a way to win it. But just off of early assumptions that he is going to play, give me the Steelers.
All right, then we're going to prime time, and on Sunday night, I wish they would have flexed out of this game. With so many good 3 o'clock games, they could have flexed out of this. But anyways, you'll have the 6-2 Ravens at the Patriots at 3-5, who got the great victory on Monday night against the Jets, which I say that in complete sarcasm. The Ravens are a 7-point favorite here. Look, I'm not going to spend too much time trying to decide what's going to happen here. The Ravens win.
Yeah, Phillip, and I know you meant it sarcastically, but you called it a great victory for the Pats. I call it lucky. Give me the Ravens, man, just because Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton, yeah, it's going to be a good showdown, but I don't think the Pats get by with winning a close game last second at home like they did at New York this past week. I think the Ravens come in here and win it by at least 14.
Then on Monday night, we have the Vikings at 3-5. At the Bears, 5-4. Minnesota, they are a 2.5-point favorite here. And look, this is really two football teams going opposite directions. The Vikings have won 2 in a row by feeding the ball to Dalvin Cook. In the last 2 weeks, he against Green Bay, he had 163 for 3 touchdowns. And then last week against Detroit, he rushed for 206, 2 touchdowns with a 9.4 average. On the other side, Chicago has lost 3 in a row. They were 5-1. They are not good offensively, only averaging 19.8. Running game is horrible, 82.3. I think the Bears' defense can keep this game close for a little bit, but I think Dalvin Cook will wear down that defense and hit some big runs in the second half of this game. I'm going with the Vikings to win their 3rd game in a row.
Oh, man, last pick of this podcast. I'm taking the Bears. Listen, they're at home. Now, I love Dalvin Cook. I love Dalvin Cook. For staying alone with the Vikings. But even though the Bears are bad in some areas of the field, I think they find a way to get this done. They need this win, and I think they get it done at home on Monday night.
All right, that's not the last pick. I'm not making a pick on this last thing, but you are, because you are a much, much bigger fan of golf than I am. But the Masters are this week, which is weird saying in November, but 2020, of course. Who wins the Masters this weekend?
Oh, man. Look, as much as I despise this guy, he's the favorite. I'm picking him to win. Bryson DeChambeau is going to win the Masters. Look, I want Tiger to at least show some effort, hit some nice putts, hit some good fairways on the green, and make the cut. But I think DeChambeau wins, and I think he wins it by at least 2 or 3 strokes. I wanted to pick Tiger just because he's the defending champion, but man, he hasn't really played efficiently enough this year to show me that he can contend on golf's greatest tournament of the year. So give me DeChambeau. He's the favorite. I'm going to take him to win.
All right, there you have it. The Masters pick is in, and I'm sure next week when we do the picks, we will look back at that one, including how both of us did. It's going to be close on the football games because we picked a lot of them the same. There's only about, I think, 3 or 4 that were opposing picks on that one. But and Brandon, I appreciate this. That was a lot of fun, and I look forward to doing this at the end of each podcast. And this one part went 30 minutes this week. We had a lot to talk about as what's going on in the NFL, but probably will be shorter next week when we just do the picks, if that's how it goes. But anyways, Brandon, once again, I appreciate you coming on and doing this with the picks. But if everybody wanted to follow you online, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Eisenman_sports. You can also find all my LSU content over at LSU Tigers Wire. And you can find my LSU Breakdown podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, and Anchor.
All right, sounds good. And Brandon, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good, man.
Everybody, that's going to do it for this edition of the Phillip Jordan Football Podcast. Thanks for Bleacher Report's Brent Sobleski for coming on the show, and also Brandon Eisenman for coming on to do the pick segment, which Brandon will be on each week at the end to help me pick all the games coming up on the NFL. So it's going to be a lot of fun doing this show throughout the rest of the season, through the Super Bowl, and keep it going after season as well. Keep you updated on all the news and stuff going on in the National Football League. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC, and you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor. More platforms will be coming. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show, and you can email me at sportstalkphilipjordan@gmail.com. And last, before we go, this week, of course, Veterans Day. Thank you to everybody out there that has served in the military. Appreciate your sacrifice, all the stuff you do. This country isn't what it is without our military, so appreciate people who are serving now and also people who have served in the past. Greatly, greatly appreciate everything that you do. And if you're out there, you see somebody that's a military or someone you know that was in a military that has served this country, protected this country, please go shake their hand and just give them a big hug, a big thank you, and tell them you appreciate everything that they have done. And I just want to say, everybody, this is a once-a-week podcast, but I will be back next week, talk more things NFL. We got some big matchups this week, so it'll be interesting to break it all down on next week's show. And everybody take care of yourself. Let's all do the right things, and let's love each other, and let's care about each other. I'll talk to you guys next week, and I hope you have a great week. Bye-bye.